We're back on a Thursday night on Open Line, and as you see on the banner there, coercive control and cults is our topic tonight. It is fascinating. We hope you'll call in if you have questions or comments. 737+ wide open lines right now. Debbie, I want to talk a little bit about a book you wrote, it came out a few years ago, Whispering in the Daylight, The Children of Tony Alamo Christian Ministries and Their Journey to Freedom. For those who don't know the story of Tony Alamo, give us kind of in a nutshell.
Okay, Tony Alamo and his wife Susan started a church in California in the late 60s, early 70s. Charles Manson era. Flower Children went out west, and they preyed on people looking for something better, and they built a real following in California, and then moved to different states and opened other places, basically because Tony was dodging the IRS, but he made a name for himself here in Nashville. In the 70s and 80s, he had the Music Square Church and a store with clothing. He's best known for the blue jean jackets with lots of bling on them, and he called them Tony Alamo's Designs for the Stars. And a lot of people still have those jackets. Children made those jackets and worked in warehouses.
And obviously they didn't know at the time. People buying the jackets had no idea what was going on.
But they were very prominent here in Nashville.
And you said right away they preyed on people. Let's talk a little bit about the psychology behind that and the vulnerabilities of people and how that happens, that process happens.
Tony and Susan were a couple that really worked well together. He was a promoter, but she was out there with the magic of being able to connect to people.
The loving touch. Right. As they say, right?
And cult leaders really can spot your vulnerabilities, and they look for smart people. I think often we think that people who join cults are
not that smart.
Not smart.
Just not, aware.
But cult leaders are looking for smart people who will recruit for them and make money for them. And they really preyed on the young people that went out looking for love and a different kind of society. Anti-war movement was big then. And they completely fell under their spell. And it's important for us to say that no one goes out and says, I'm going to join a cult. Right. They don't even know they're in one. Right.
Yeah, the recognition is how many people in all? Do we know how many people were following Tony?
He had as many as 1,000 something at one point. Right now, we think it's probably about 200.
Wow, unbelievable. Bill, I know that when you meet with families of cult members, tell us a little bit about how that progresses therapeutically.
When I get a call from a family member and they say, my child is in a cult, can you help? I understand what they want. They want me to try to help them to figure out a way to help the cult member to leave. But what I try to do is to get them to be more specific about what they're upset about. And when I just ask that, it's not enough just to say my child's in a cult. The issue is, well, what are the changes you've seen? What are you worried about? What's the concern? And then it helps them to start to narrow their field so that they realize exactly what they're concerned about. He was going to college and he dropped out and he said he's going to work for the Lord from now on. And I don't feel that he really made that decision on his own. Right. I feel that he was pressured. That helps him to focus on that. And what I try to do with the families is to help them to see what strengths it's usually a young adult child has that can be called upon. Who is it that he or she talks to and trusts, to try to get them to see. Every cult member has doubts, but they learn to squelch those doubts.
Yeah, I was just going to ask.
They push them down.
How do you get to that light bulb moment like eventually you did? You have this unique perspective of being a survivor. Is it with help always from families? Is it a professional, or is it a combination of everyone and support and therapy to where finally the light bulb goes off for the person who's involved, who says, oh my gosh? Yes.
It's very often because the family has intervened, the family, and I try to help them come up with a strategy for how to intervene.
And I would
But
imagine
some
that
people,
strategy is different for every family, isn't it?
Oh, of course, without question.
Right.
But some people do leave on their own because everyone has doubts, and they're trying to constantly squelch those doubts. Every now and then they say, I'm not sure that this is really what I really want to do. And timing is everything. If they can be asked a question just at the right time, what do you think you'd be doing if you weren't doing this? How would you know if you were really in a cult? How would you know? If you can ask the right question at the right time, it can help the wheels to start turning. I had a woman who was in a group called Brother Julius. Julius claimed to be a reincarnation of Jesus. And I said to her, Jesus was a humble man.
Yeah.
Is Julius a humble man? And I knew that he wasn't. I knew he was. I knew he was an arrogant, cruel pedagogue. Not a pedagogue, a pedophile.
Yeah.
Forgive me. And she said that question got her wheels turning, and eventually she left. Now, it's not because I was brilliant. It's because I happened to ask a question at the right time when this was on her mind.
Dylesia, how did it happen for you?
So for me, I actually got granted permission to go to college and stay on campus because I was one of the good students, and they felt that I could recruit for them, which I actually ended up doing. And being able to compare my experiences spiritually with those who were on campus, and watching people be in the choir and go to Bible study and still have a social life, and I didn't have any of that. That comparison is what made me realize that something was wrong. So I think what they wanted to not happen actually ended up happening.
Was it one person or a group of people who really ran things in this group?
So there was the apostle, and she's all-knowing, everything. And then she had a group of people under her who just ran the churches. So they even had to go through her as well. So even if I wanted to make a decision such as going to visit a friend for the weekend, I had to go ask her. If I wanted to go to the movie, she had to approve what the movie was. None of us were allowed to be on social media. Anything that would put you in a position where you weren't isolated amongst the people in the group, you weren't really allowed to do. Which is why I'm surprised I got to go to school, because that would put me around different viewpoints.
Did they monitor you while you were at school? I wonder if there was a concern that might happen, that you might start to see.
I still had to go to church every time the doors were open. So I still went to Bible study, I still went to Sunday school, and I actually brought students from the campus there as well. So I think as long as I was doing that, they felt that I was still on the hook. But they didn't know that I was always doubting. Like you said, in the back of my mind, I'm doubting. And as people are asking me to go out, and I'm saying I can't do that, and they're not understanding why, because we serve the same Jesus, I didn't have explanations for it. And at some point I had to realize there has to be something fishy going on here. So I left, and my family stayed, and eventually they ended up realizing that they should leave too.
Was there any abuse, verbal, physical?
There was verbal abuse. I'm sure other people had different experiences. There was verbal abuse. There were a lot of exorcisms that were false. One time I had a family member get exorcised, and the reason was that she wouldn't stand up when they told her to stand. So everybody else in the building was standing and kind of worshiping the apostle. That's what we did. And she didn't. She was on her phone. Just a bratty teenager not wanting to obey, and she needed to be exorcised. So that happened, and I don't know that that falls in the category of abuse per se, because it's not what we technically would think of, but I thought it was pretty abusive emotionally.
Were there threats that were obvious or veiled?
They would have been veiled, yeah. Nothing was obvious. There were times where people, I remember one family, for instance, there were 5 children in the family, a mom and then the dad. The dad was the sole provider, and he got a promotion, and he was waiting on the promotion because he has a lot of kids to take care of. And he had to ask her could he take it, and she said no. And that was another moment for me of like, that doesn't make sense. Like, this person needs more money, but you're creating a situation where they depend solely on the ministry, and can't advance themselves. So a lot of that happened.
After you left, when did you decide that you wanted to get your, had you already gotten your master's in social work?
I hadn't at the time.
Okay.
So when I left, I was only 18. So a couple years after that, well, probably far more than a couple, but I ended up getting a degree. And I realized that because my healing process wasn't linear, and I didn't know to reach out to therapists or, you know, no one really understood what I was talking about, I wanted to make sure that I created a process for someone else in the event that they were looking for help, because I felt like I didn't have answers. I was really healing on my own.
It's a unique perspective, isn't it?
And it is, and that's happening. I think we still don't have enough help for people who come out of cults. There's a whole different set of needs, and that's one reason we're having the conference this Saturday, to try to help educate mental health workers and educators and people who work on the front lines and would encounter survivors.
737+ is the phone number if you would like to talk to our panel. After this break, we are going to talk about this event this weekend. It is Saturday at the Tennessee State Museum. It's called Coercive Control, Cults, and Community. We'll be right back.